Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And, politics, there's ups, there's downs. I consider this a tsunami. California, which I don't think a Republican has won a major office since Schwarzenegger, and I'm not so sure he was that much of a Republican, but you have in the gubernatorial race, Steve Hilton is now leading, and in the LA mayoral race, you have Pratt ahead of Bass. Your thoughts? I find that the canary in the coal mine. That's I forgot the guy's name who's the head of. He won't be for long, by the way. The Democratic Party. That's got to be more than concerning. Even if Hilton doesn't go on to win or Pratt, it is showing the discontent with unchallenged liberal/democratic rule. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, it is a sea change. A Republican has not won a statewide election in California since 2006. Now, the California primaries are a little different from everywhere else. In California, you do not run in a party primary. Everybody, regardless of party, runs in the same race. And then the top two contenders, regardless of what party they're in, go on to the general election. So what you usually have is you've got 8 Democrats running in a primary, 1 or 2 Republicans. The Republicans are wiped out in the primary.
Immediately.
So no matter who wins the general election, the power stays with the Democratic Party until yesterday. Yesterday, both the LA mayoral race and the California gubernatorial race, Republicans moved on to the general election. Now, I do want to point out that technically the primary is not over. California has massive mail-in voting, and according to California regulations, if the ballot is postmarked by, in this case, June 2nd, the date of the primary, they keep counting them. The count will not be completed for another week. It finishes on June 9th, which gives the Democrat plenty of leeway to commit fraud.
I would agree with that. I still believe, looking at the Hilton number and actually Pratt, you never know with the Democrats. I think it's a pretty good betting odds say that they will be around for the second round.
Oh, I think they're going to have to be at this point because the voter turnout was very public. The results so far have been very public. If all of a sudden a Democrat surges out of nowhere with absentee votes to take over that spot, it's going to be highly suspect. There has been more of a spotlight on California elections this year than they have possibly in at least 20 years, if not more. And I think part of it is because People are tired of what's been going on. The Democratic Party has their lowest approval rating. I believe the last time I saw it was the lowest in 50 years. They haven't been this low since Reagan, mid Reagan.
Yes, correct. And, we talked about what's going on. You look at the LBGQ XL7, even the NFL corporations. I saw a little segment, Oreo, about, I don't know, 3 years ago, had a coming out. It had nothing to do with the cookie, obviously. But yeah, those days are gone, correct? Even corporations, MLB blew it off. But what's the point? The point is the Democrats are going down a cliff and the rest of America is going up a cliff. The, basic algebra, that doesn't bode well for them, does it?
No, it really doesn't. The Democrats, for some reason, are doing everything they can to go in the opposite direction that the general public is. And they're losing ground. I mean, they were never going to gain ground with diehard Republicans, but they are losing massive ground with independents. And you can't win a general election without the independent vote. That's always been the key. Going back 100 years, you've got 1/3 of the population who are going to vote Democrat no matter who they put up. To use Nancy Pelosi's term, you could put a coffee cup with a D on it. Those folks would vote. You've got 1/3 of the population that's going to vote Republican, no matter who the Republicans put up. But if you cannot win that independent vote, there's no way you can overcome to win an election. And the Democrats, because they keep putting far left candidates up, which, remember, in most states, Republicans and independents cannot vote in Democratic primaries. Same thing, Democrats and independents can't vote in Republican primaries in most states. So you've got the far left coming out for these primaries, pushing radical candidates who do not stand a chance of getting the independent vote in the general election.
Doctor, I always like looking at root causes. And I'll ask you first, before I put my 2 cents in. Why would it's like an alcoholic? They keep drinking, and then they get fired, and then the rest doesn't end too well. Why is it then that they're not completely stupid? I don't really know if that's actually true, but assuming that they're not, why would you do something that's resulting in your own demise? I think it has to do with one major factor, but I'm going to throw it out to the doctor.
I think there's a couple of major factors. The biggest is arrogance. They believe that they know what's best for America, so America has to listen to them. And they're
Agreed.
going to push this agenda no matter what people are saying, because they honestly believe this is the correct way to do it. The second thing, and we've talked about this going back to terrestrial radio, they don't get out of their bubble. They're in an echo chamber. So people in New York City, people in Hollywood tell the Democrats, oh, no, you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing. This is absolutely correct. And they don't pay attention to mainstream America. And up until recently, you had the mainstream media parroting whatever the Democrats told them. But now you've got a major turnaround there. You've got just yesterday, you had Scott Pelley fired from 60 Minutes because he
Okay,
was
wait, I got an
arguing.
interjection about Pelley. I had it written down, I kid you not, but I crossed it off because we like to really just focus on the major issues. But it's indicative of how the so-called media went off the rails. I mean, he wasn't just a partisan hack, he was out of control. He gave a commencement address at Wake Forest. It was like a Democratic rally. Like he didn't even care.
And
that
he
didn't
is
even pretend, I should say.
right. He is now going public claiming that the new management of 60 Minutes, the new management of CBS News and of Paramount in general have been trying to convince him to put things that he knew weren't true into his newscasts. Well, the facts are actually 180 degrees. 60 Minutes has been putting things out with no real investigation.
Never.
The facts don't support their conclusions, but they believe it regardless of what the facts said.
But doesn't that go to what we just talked about?
Right.
Democrats believe it. And let me just interject one more thing about that, Dr. Lopkin. And we've talked about this a billion, trillion times. However, I also think you talk about elites, and they are elite, and they go to elite schools, and they get taught by communist psychopathic professors with these grandiose theories that these people never actually worked a day in their lives. And guess what? It all hits the shitter. Look at LA. And the other thing, though, you did talk about celebrities. A lot of celebrities in LA, at least, have turned on Mayor Bass.
Yes.
Not all, but surprisingly a big number.
Obviously not all, but this came back to bite them because a lot of those celebrities lost homes in the Palisades fire. And now they're dealing with Los Angeles and California, stopping them from rebuilding, refusing permits. They've actually had to deal with the consequences, which for liberals rarely ever happens.
I love that. No, Dr. Lopkin, I got to interject. That is an amazing point because they would have voted if it was all these blue collar quotation losers. Well, they couldn't afford places there. But if they burned down and blah, 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 they'd still be gung-ho about Bass. But this is a real situation where they actually had to experience their own theoretical bullshit.
Exactly. This, most of the time when liberals put out policies, it's not the liberal elites that have to deal with the consequences. It's the working class. It's the working poor. And, they believe they're helping these folks. But take a look at what happened to LA. Take a look at what's happening to New York City. They are falling apart. And, recently stats came out that crime overall in the country is going down.
Way down.
And the liberals started saying, well, this just proves that our policies are working. It's like, no, if you actually dig into those statistics, you see what actually happened. Trump sent the FBI and ICE into these areas, and all of a sudden, crime went down. Trump closed the border, and crime went down.
Shocking. I also think the California situation, Hilton and Pratt, could be, I hope so, the death nail to Greasy. Newsom.
It's very possible. If California actually elects a Republican governor, his hopes of the presidency are gone. Because the same way when Hillary ran in 2016, Obama campaigned to protect his legacy.
Yes.
Newsom's legacy is dead if a Republican actually flips California.
Yeah, real quick, I also think that it has nothing to do with what we really want. It kind of does. I think Obama's legacy is also shot, and it freaks him out.
Oh, well,
freaks him out.
Obama's legacy has been dead for years. He just hasn't realized it.
That's it.
I think what really
it's like Def Leppard still touring. There
right.
You go.
I think what really started hammering it home for him was the fact that they unveiled the statues in front of that ugly ass library of his, and social media went nuts going, wait a minute, he looks like Opie Cunningham.
And you know what's funny about that? And he had a major part, of course he did, his ego couldn't prevent him from designing that building. If you didn't tell me what it was, and we were just driving by it, going to the White Sox game, which would be dangerous, by the way, and you'd said it was a supermax prison, I go, whoa.
You'd believe it,
brutal.
yes.
No, I'd say, whoa, that's got to be brutal in there. So anyway,
I think the library is the perfect metaphor for Obama's presidency. It was over budget. It missed every deadline. It's ugly as hell, and it's an abject disaster.
Other than that, how would you like to play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Exactly.
And we look at the national situation, political, and many analysts, very astute, say that, the Democrats should be, in really good position to crush things. But a CNN poll said that indicates that there's a 50, and betting odds support this as well, that there's a 57, at least right now, 57% chance that the Republicans keep the Senate. And it's really not surprising. You have Telefrico, and that guy is not well. Okay, let's be, come on. And then Plattner, he might make Telefrico look normal. How much more insanity can you get? And you have people, and the Democrats just barely peeping about it. You have our esteemed Senator Chris Murphy basically saying, well, he's still all around nice guy. Murphy also has aspirations of becoming president. And, I have an aspiration of playing Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Chris Murphy actually just came out with a new book.
Oh, God. And is it like a flip run?
It's a coloring book.
Yeah, there you go.
No, he did come out with a new book. And in this book, he is trying to position himself as a moderate because he knows the stuff that he's been spouting is not going to do well in a presidential election. Well, I hate to break it to him. We've said in the past, we expect him to do just as well as Chris Dodd did, who was Murphy's predecessor. When Dodd ran for president, he never beat the margin of error in any polls. We expect Murphy to do just the same because the last Connecticut politician that did well on the national stage was Joe Lieberman. And there's a reason for that. Lieberman spoke to the average American. The country does not have a good vision of Connecticut. They think Connecticut is the elites. It's the deep blue, not just Democrat. It's the deep Democratic state now. And nobody has any respect for Connecticut. And in Connecticut, they've moved their primary so far back that by the time Connecticut residents would actually vote for a presidential candidate, Murphy will already have been eliminated.
He will be eliminated on the way driving to the first debate. How do you like that? Okay. So yes, major problem. I think it's hysterical that, you talk about the Republicans that could always have a circular firing squad. The Dems are taking it to a new level. And speaking of taking it to a new level, Jill Biden, the Bidens, a gift. Kamala and the Bidens are gifts that just keep on giving. I thought he was having a stroke. So being the caring wife I am, I drove him to a rally at Waffle House. Had some bacon, eggs, syrup. That's the first thing they say. If a loved one's having a stroke, either go to Burger King or the Waffle House. And it really helps a lot.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. Her claims that she thought Joe was having a stroke during the first debate. Now, in her defense, when you watch the debate, it does look like he's having a stroke.
But it was a perpetual stroke for like 4 years.
Yeah, it was going on and on. But everybody knew that this was going on. Again, we've seen about half a dozen books come out where people were talking about the cover-up. Everybody knew. She knew what Joe's condition was. To suddenly think he's having a stroke and do nothing about it.
I love that. And I also think that, Joe doesn't know the difference between truth and fiction. He never did. But with his dementia, it's gotten worse. But she's no bargain either. She was on The View or something. And she's saying, oh, yes, I thought Kamala was going to win. And I woke up and I was making coffee to go to my community college course that no one really gives a shit about. And on my phone, it popped up. She lost. Um, you've been in politics for like a billion years. Um, you didn't stay up and see who won? Yeah, okay. And then she goes, I went to wake up Joe and ask him why didn't he wake me up? Well, because he was embalmed at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There you go.
Right. The idea that Joe would have been up and Jill wouldn't is ridiculous. But I mean, the election in 2024 didn't even go that late. Trump was called the winner before 2 a.m. Not like in 2016 when it went on, hour after hour, and in 2020 when they didn't call it until the next day. There was no reason. If you really are involved in politics, and
Which they are.
and as first lady, I think that's pretty much the definition of being involved in politics.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch, but I don't understand it. I'm obviously not a big fan of the Bidens. They're the number one grifters of all time. And I love when she said, Joe has given 50 years to this country. No, he's been giving 50 years lining his pockets. If he actually had to make a living, he'd be working at Walmart as a aisle 7 lawyer. There you go.
Yeah, for all of the community service, the public service that the Bidens gave, as soon as he announced that he was not running for re-election, notice all of a sudden Hunter Biden's artwork stopped selling. All of a sudden, donations to his, to UPenn to the Biden office.
Well, I have to interject.
Dried up.
I have to interject. Okay, UPenn, Ivy League school. What were they even thinking? You have someone that barely got out of college having the Joe Biden wing at UPenn. Obviously, it was
it was about the money,
Of course, yeah, of course.
I mean, that's actually something a lot of people don't understand. College buildings, college courses, they're not named after people in general because they're great people. They're named after them because somebody is giving a lot of money for that name.
That's right. Yes. And he said he was a professor there. Yeah, sure he was. Now, we also do a lot and focus a lot on business. And I think business is increasingly, or economic considerations are increasingly being dovetailed, not that they always weren't, into demographic situations. And it's very interesting that I'll let you take the lead on this, that basically you look at the unemployment numbers, a lot of it is really skewed towards younger, what Gen Zs or what have you, and their problems with actually working in a work environment. Your thoughts?
Yeah,
and the skill levels.
Yeah, the New York Fed actually just released a study where they interviewed employers, they looked into the situation, because the number of recent grads who are unemployed is unusually high, and it's actually pushing up the entire unemployment picture. Older Americans, in a major reversal, actually, are close to full employment.
And can I interject one thing about that that's interesting? And you know this very well, being a leading business consultant, that in corporate, after you're 55, and if you did not rise to at least a VP level, how do you say hasta luego? And like you said, corporations, now it's not going to be a big career job, are hiring older workers because they're better.
Yes, what the New York Fed found is that the major reason, and one of the things they were looking into, is there's been this assumption that entry-level jobs are being taken over by AI. Well, what the Fed found out is that that's actually not true. While AI is certainly changing jobs, it's not taking entry-level jobs at this point. What is taking these jobs is remote work. Companies do not want to hire recent grads to work remotely because they don't feel they can train them properly. They don't have faith that they got proper training in college, and they don't feel that they have the accountability needed to get the work done. So
Yes.
if they have remote work, that work is going to older workers who have proven themselves.
And actually we're beneficiaries of a actual semblance of a real education. And to put in perspective, I'm not going to obviously not name the school, but this is pervasive. It's not this is the school I taught, but in college, you'd actually get an achievement award for failing because I think it's pretty close to impossible, unless you never show up. A C is is unheard of, and the interesting point about you talk about the skill level, a Harvard MBA, this is not just me speculating, I've actually saw this. A Harvard MBA was bulletproof. I don't care if you had the Great Recession, whatever, you name it, full employment. A year later, most, not a few, most of Harvard MBAs are still looking for work. That's a fact.
Well, Harvard actually just recently announced that starting next semester, classes are going to limit the number of A's a professor can give out because they've been giving out A's and B's like candy. Without the students actually earning them.
Yeah, no, true. And what is the big deal about that? The big deal is it's kind of like supply and demand. 30 years ago, whatever you want to call it, you get a Harvard MBA. Yeah, you kind of earned something. Now, everyone knows, first of all, what are they learning? I don't even want to know, quite frankly. And everyone, basically, it's pay to play. Let's cut the crap.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. If you can afford to go to college, there's a college out there for you. Might not be Harvard, might not be Yale, and quite frankly, even Harvard and Yale, if mom and dad are giving a big enough gift, you'll get in.
There you go. Well, Dr. Lopkin, another great edition of Carnivore Radio. Next week when we reconnect, we'll certainly have I would certainly hope, the actual results of California. And I'm sure there'll be many other things because it's a really active political and geopolitical environment, isn't it?
It really is. And of course, with this changing face of America, we want to hear what you have to say. What is your opinion on the issues? Go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you find it. And of course, you can listen to every episode at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. I'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.